All right, let's unpack this. We are diving into a specific report today, one that takes a hard look at Hezbollah's situation right now, especially after the recent conflict up north.
That's right. And this isn't just, a general overview. This deep dive is based on a special report from May 2025. It was put together by Tal Beery over at the Alma Center.
Okay.
And they've pulled together insights from open sources, plus their own independent analysis. So it gives us a really detailed picture.
Right. And the core question this report wrestles with is pretty profound and frankly critical, isn't it? Is this moment right now a historic opportunity to actually eliminate Hezbollah's military power, to disarm the whole organization?
That's an idea, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, a dangerous illusion.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the central dilemma the report really confronts. And to get at that, it looks at several key things. Hezbollah's current military status after the fighting.
Okay.
Their efforts to rebuild and rehabilitate the internal situation within Hezbollah and broader Lebanese dynamics.
Right.
Their core ideology, which is crucial. And finally, what all this suggests about their future prospects.
So we're taking their analysis, looking at the source material they pulled together, and seeing what it tells us. Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
So the report kicks off by detailing the significant damage Hezbollah has sustained. And it sounds like it's been severe.
Oh, absolutely. The sources point to really severe losses in leadership, including, very senior commanders.
Key figures.
Yeah, key figures like Nasrallah and his reported successor, Hashem Safi al-Din, were apparently eliminated, along with what's described as most of the Jihad Council. That's their top military leadership body.
Wow, most of the council.
And beyond that, the report actually tallies over 170 senior commanders across various operational units who were taken out.
170. That's a staggering number. What about the rank and file fighters?
Well, the report estimates their casualties at around 15% of their total operative force.
15%.
Yeah. Before the war, the estimate was roughly 100,000 operatives, give or take, including reserves. But here's a critical point. A large chunk of these casualties were within their operational core.
Meaning
The most experienced fighters.
Yeah.
The ones actually carrying out the missions day to day.
So it wasn't just the very top brass, but the experienced guys on the ground too. And specific units took a really hard hit, I gather.
Definitely. The report specifically singles out the Radwan unit. That's their elite commando force, right? The one intended for cross-border stuff.
Right, into Galilee.
Exactly. And the Nasser and Aziz geographical units down in the south of Lebanon. These areas, these units, saw intense focus from Israeli operations. The assessment is that the Radwan unit, right now at least, has lost its operational capability for its main mission, that infiltration mission.
So, okay, they might still have operatives near the border, but their ability to launch a significant offensive across it is heavily curtailed.
Precisely. Movement, activity, right along that contact line. It's restricted. That was, the main focus of the IDF's ground and air ops.
Makes sense. And what about their infrastructure? We've heard so much about Hezbollah's underground networks, the so-called tunnel land.
Yeah, the sources do confirm that many underground infrastructures right along that contact line in southern Lebanon were destroyed.
Attack tunnels, too.
Yes, the attack tunnels designed to cross into Israel, and also the approach tunnels leading close up to the border. However, and this is a really crucial nuance, the report stresses many more underground sites still exist.
Okay. Where?
Further south of the Litani River, but also north of the Litani in the Badura units area, and critically within the Bekaa Valley.
That's their rear base, logistically.
Exactly, their deep logistical rear. The report suggests these areas likely still hold large quantities of weapons. We're talking stored arsenals, launchers ready to go. They even point to an example near Nabatea that was bombed, but it just sort of indicates the scale of what probably exists elsewhere.
Okay, so they've definitely taken significant damage, no question. Personnel, forward infrastructure, big hits. But it sounds like the report then pivots to how they're trying to bounce back. And Iran's role seems, absolutely central here.
Oh, completely central. The report highlights a deep strategic involvement from Iran in both the military and economic reconstruction. The Quds Force, that's the expeditionary arm of Iran's Revolutionary Guards, the IRGC, is reportedly leading this whole process.
And it's not just sending money, is it? They're sending actual people, expertise.
Precisely. The sources indicate professional officers, experts, from at least 6 different Revolutionary Guards units are physically present in Lebanon, on the ground.
6 different units Doing what?
These aren't just advisors sitting back. They're closely mentoring, directing Hezbollah's rebuilding.
Hmm.
You can think of these units as Iran's sort of knowledge centers, covering everything from advanced missiles, UAVs, logistics, R&D, cyber, electronic warfare, complex smuggling ops, the works.
Wow.
The goal is explicit: help Hezbollah regain its strength, and potentially within just a few short years.
And they're not just replacing like for like, are they? The report suggests they're adapting, focusing on self-production now, diversifying smuggling routes.
Yes, exactly. Self-production, especially for things like UAVs and precision missiles, that's getting renewed importance. And that's largely because the traditional smuggling corridor through Syria became way more challenging after the Assad regime fell back in December 2024.
Right, that makes sense. Syria used to be the main land bridge from Iran.
It was. So now they're investing heavily in local production. The sources even mention a specific underground precision missile plant near Nabi Chijanta.
I remember reading about that.
Yeah, it's apparently been attacked 4 times. But the fact that Hezbollah keeps trying to get it back online, even after multiple hits, well, it really underscores their determination to get that domestic capability going again.
That really highlights the gap the report talks about, doesn't it? Between what some Lebanese officials might say about disarming Hezbollah and the reality of their persistent efforts on the ground.
Absolutely. And smuggling, as you mentioned, that's the other key piece.
Bringing in weapons they can't make themselves.
Right. Weapons plus the cash and gold needed to finance everything.
Right.
And with Syria being less reliable, they've had to get creative.
So where are they trying to smuggle things from now, according to the report? What are these alternative routes?
Okay, so the report points to a few possibilities: that Hezbollah's Unit 4400, that's their smuggling and logistics unit, along with the Iranian Quds Force units like 190 and 700, might be using or exploring.
Such as?
There's the direct sea route from Iran, possibly via the Suez Canal. Then there's an indirect, sort of combined sea-air-land route.
How would that work?
It apparently goes through Sudan, then across North Africa, maybe Libya or Algeria, to the Mediterranean coast, and then presumably by sea again to Lebanon.
Complicated.
Very. And then there are air routes, primarily for money and gold, maybe via Iraq or even Turkey.
Baghdad International Airport comes up, doesn't it? The sources say a deputy commander of Unit 4400, who was later eliminated, was looking into it.
It's a telling detail, yeah. Shows the level of planning. The Turkish land route is also mentioned as a possibility.
And Syria isn't totally out of the picture.
No, not entirely. The report says Hezbollah is trying to acquire weapons still available in Syria from the old army stockpiles, and they're still using existing smuggling tunnels. Some of these tunnels are pretty strategic, quite long apparently, like one connecting Al-Qaisa in Syria to Mar al-Zakba in Lebanon.
And the report suggests that if the U.S. were to reduce its presence in Syria, especially in key spots like Al-Tanf,
Then, yeah, the assessment is it could potentially make it much easier for Iran and Hezbollah to reestablish influence there, maybe shorten those corridor routes again.
so the instability in Syria actually creates opportunities for them.
Paradoxically, yes. Through new collaborations, shifting power dynamics, they can exploit that.
Okay, so beyond the military and the smuggling, the report also gives us a look inside Hezbollah itself and the wider political scene in Lebanon.
Yeah.
Sounds like there's some significant internal strain.
The sources do indicate a real crisis of confidence within Hezbollah. Operatives are reportedly losing faith in the current leadership. And there seems to be a distinct lack of trust among the leadership figures themselves.
That makes a lot of sense, given the huge losses they took, especially those long-standing, maybe more charismatic figures like Nasrallah. The report mentions the current political leadership is seen as somewhat dull.
Exactly. And there's a very strong, pervasive sense of intelligence penetration, feeling like they've been infiltrated.
Which must be paralyzing.
Understandably, yeah. It's reportedly hindering and sometimes even paralyzing their operational activity. The ongoing successful eliminations by Israel just seem to reinforce this feeling of being compromised.
Right. What about the broader political environment in Lebanon? Has that shifted? Is it tougher for them?
The report notes a less enabling environment externally for Hezbollah compared to before the conflict. You've got a new president, a new government that the sources suggest Hezbollah didn't actively want. The Lebanese army seems to have an increased, maybe an ostensibly more dominant presence and activity in certain areas. And other political groups, other sects within Lebanon seem to be gaining a bit more courage, maybe, to voice dissent or operate more independently.
Hezbollah still holds significant power, right? The report mentions municipal elections happening around the time it was written.
Yes, and that's the crucial counterpoint. Despite some frustration among their Shiite base, especially in those war-torn southern areas, and maybe a visible decrease in public displays of enthusiastic support, the report suggests this hadn't really translated into a big shift in electoral power. Hezbollah, often allied with the Alma movement, still seem to maintain relatively stable control in most areas important for their operations.
Okay, so moving from the practical situation and internal dynamics to the absolute core of what Hezbollah is, the report sounds very clear on its ideology.
Yeah, this is maybe the most fundamental point the report makes. The core ideology of Hezbollah isn't just political, it's not just strategic. It is armed resistance.
It's their identity.
Exactly. The report really stresses this isn't just a tool for them or means to an end. It is their identity. And according to the sources, that identity is non-negotiable.
It's driven by this deep-seated sense of honor, pride, a profound belief in the necessity of armed struggle against Israel. There's that quote attributed to Nasrallah, the former leader. It's quite telling, isn't it?
Which one?
They will take our souls before they take our weapons, not because we love weapons, but because weapons are the symbol of honor and pride. Something like that.
Right. That rifle on their flag isn't just, a graphic element. It's a core statement of who they are. And this identity helps explain some of their actions that might seem counterintuitive, like their decision not to go all in, not to launch a full-scale war back on October 7th.
They chose attrition instead.
Right. The report argues they opted for a kind of half-war, an attrition campaign, partly to preserve their narrative and identity as the resistance supporting from afar, rather than risking absolutely everything.
Which, the report assesses, ended up being a strategic mistake anyway. Cost them dearly in infrastructure and personnel without achieving any decisive military result.
That seems to be the conclusion, yeah.
So, bringing all of this together, the report circles back to that initial, really big question about a historic opportunity to eliminate Hezbollah. Based on this deep dive into the sources, what's the report's ultimate conclusion on that?
Well, the conclusion's quite stark, really. Despite the severe damage they've taken, Hezbollah is far from disappearing.
Still standing.
Very much so. While their current ability to launch certain kinds of attacks is limited, due to the hits on their missile and rocket systems, their headquarters, and specific units like Radwan, Nasser, and Aziz are significantly impacted operationally. Their core structure, their resolve, it isn't crushed.
The environment might be less comfortable for them now, both inside the organization with morale issues and maybe regionally with shifts in Lebanon. But their foundational strength remains.
Yes, precisely. Yeah. Because that fundamental core, that armed resistance identity, it's still there, reportedly as strong as ever. And crucially, Iran has made a clear strategic decision to fully back their rebuilding efforts.
We saw that with the Quad's force involvement.
Exactly. They are actively adapting. They're emphasizing self-production, developing new smuggling routes, investing heavily in restructuring, in training.
And they still have that unique civilian base, don't they? What the report calls the resistance society.
Their loyal population base, backed by their own extensive civilian infrastructure, schools, hospitals, banks, that basically functions in parallel to the Lebanese state.
Even their main financial lifeline, the Al-Qard Al-Hassan Bank, is reportedly still functioning despite international pressure.
And this civilian base, this parallel infrastructure, it's absolutely vital for their survival and for their long-term rehabilitation campaign. And then there's the demographic factor the report mentions.
Right, the growing Shiite population in Lebanon.
Yeah, potentially Hezbollah's ultimate silent weapon is how the report puts it, suggesting that, basic nature and time could work in their favor in the long run.
Patience. That seems to be a key theme here, both for Hezbollah and maybe for any force trying to counter them.
It really is. The report explicitly states that given this reality, Hezbollah is a deeply ideological, patient, sophisticated enemy with Iran's full backing. The critical question isn't whether a historic opportunity exists right now to eliminate or disarm them completely.
That's the illusion.
That possibility is framed pretty directly as a dangerous illusion, yes.
Okay. So if that's not the question, what is?
Instead, the report posits the real questions, the ones that matter are, does Israel have the strategic endurance needed to continue weakening Hezbollah steadily over time? And crucially, does the state of Lebanon itself ultimately have the will and the ability to confront and rein in Hezbollah's independent military power?
That really shifts the focus, doesn't it? Away from looking for one decisive, quick win.
Towards acknowledging a prolonged, complex strategic challenge, one that's deeply dependent on long-term persistence and, frankly, the very intricate internal dynamics within Lebanon itself.
So to loop right back to our original question at the start of this deep dive, is there a historic opportunity right now to eliminate Hezbollah's military power and disarm them? Based on this report and the sources it analyzed, the answer seems to be a pretty strong no, and the idea itself is maybe a dangerous illusion.
The sources show significant damage, yes, absolutely, but they also detail just immense determination to rebuild deep and active Iranian support.
Yeah.
A non-negotiable identity centered on armed resistance and these foundational support structures within Lebanon that are still largely intact and key to their recovery.
So the report's ultimate question then becomes about strategic endurance, doesn't it? Israel's ability to keep up targeted pressure over the long haul, and the state of Lebanon's capacity, and maybe more importantly, its willingness to actually challenge Hezbollah's entrenched military presence.
Right. It's not about finding a single knockout punch. It's about understanding this is a long-term, very complex struggle.
And considering those insights from the report about Hezbollah's deep reliance on its resistance society, its parallel civilian systems, those underlying demographic trends, what is the report's assessment about patience, both Hezbollah's patience in rebuilding and potentially Israel's patience in sustaining pressure? What does that truly imply for the long-term future of the region? Definitely something to think about as you process all this information from the source.